All right, Cameron, thank you for sitting down with me today on the Cole memo. Before we get into it, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us where we can find your brands online?
Great. Thanks, Cole. Pleasure to be on the podcast here. Always love talking about our story and our history. And I like to be a little bit progressive in the way in the my ideas on things. And certainly I'm very opinionated. So happy to stir the pot a little bit. Um, my name is Cameron Clarke. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Sunderstorm. Sunderstorm was founded in 2015. We created the Kana brand of edibles in early 2016, and it's been a very interesting ride ever since. If folks want to learn about our brand, you can go to our websites or Instagram. One is kanabliss.com or Instagram kanabliss. Or you can learn about our hemp stuff if you're not in our licensed states, which is at kanalife.com and kanalife Instagram. My personal best way to reach me on personally is on LinkedIn. So Cameron Clarke, CEO of Sunderstorm. It's easy to find me on LinkedIn. So yeah.
Perfect. And we'll have those links in the show notes if that makes it easier for you, listeners that would like to learn more. And, you know, just to dive right in, I want to first give a plug for the Dime podcast. I'll have that link in the show notes as well. You were recently on the Dime podcast, and a lot of the questions I was going to have for you today have been answered. So I almost want to encourage people to go and check that episode out first, and then maybe come back. Whatever order you take, it doesn't matter to me. But I wanted to give a great shout out to Brian and Kellen for an awesome interview. I think you'd agree, Cameron.
It was
Um,
fun. We had a good time. Yeah, it was
yeah.
great.
And you talked about a lot of different things. One of the things, like I was telling you before we went on air, that I found really interesting was, you mentioned that Thailand had completely descheduled cannabis, and that sounded pretty interesting. I wanted to ask you about how things are going there from your perspective, and I just wanted to mention as we get into this, you also had said, you described the U.S. cannabis industry as too regulated. So I wanted to ask you, how are things going in Thailand first, and then maybe we can talk about the U.S. cannabis industry being too regulated. I think that's an interesting conversation.
I think it's a really great case study. Those of us who have been in the cannabis industry for an extended period of time, next year will be our 10th year. And then I was tinkering a little bit. It took me a couple of years actually to get into it. So have that base of knowledge. But those of us that have been in it for extended periods of time have been dreaming for a world where cannabis is just freely available, broadly available to consumers in a safe way. And we haven't seen that really in Canada. We haven't seen it in the US. Certainly haven't seen it in Europe. But Thailand, 2.5 years ago, just ripped the cover off the ball from one day to the next on the I think it was the 9th of June. And they just completely descheduled it. They had a medical marijuana program in place for a few years before that, that was very much in its infancy, and facilities were being built out. And my partners that I have over there were one of the first 5 license holders. And so they were slowly moving along, like a lot of countries in the world. And suddenly the military government of all things decided to just deschedule it overnight. And the only real regulations in place were that people had to register their business with an app on their phone and do some basic reporting. But suddenly, within a matter of a year, you had many thousands of dispensaries that opened up, and you had many cultivators that came on stream, and there was a broad amount of product that was then flowing into the industry. And then on top of that, similar to New York, you had carts on the side of the road selling the product. You had a massive influx of cannabis tourism that then came into the market and is still there. And people are being able to enjoy the plant and socialize and consume it in a way that, like I said, like we've been dreaming of in the US. So I think or in other parts of the world. But I think what's fascinating about it is kind of looking at the dichotomy of these case studies, right? You have this highly regulated industry that we've all been contending with in the business, and then you have this, complete doors ripped open, blown open wide, and product everywhere. And there's pros and cons to both. There's pros and cons to both. One of the things that I love about the regulated industry in the US is that we can now say that we have much, much safer products in the market for consumers to consume. They're not just safer, but they're also consistent and they're reliable. And I'm very proud that Kana is one of those brands that has been driving this from the minute we opened our doors. Long before we got recreational in California, we've been testing everything. We've been very careful about putting pesticide-free oil into our products and making sure that what we put into the bodies of our consumers is is nothing that we wouldn't put into our own bodies ourselves, and we're very conscious here about that. So, but again, and so you don't have that testing going on in Thailand. But on the flip side, you have the availability of product, and you have an industry that is burgeoning and developing, and a lot of excitement and enthusiasm, and you have an understanding and appreciation for the plant that is sometimes hard to develop in other countries, certainly the US. And you have a lot of good operators there that are trying to do the right thing and really deliver great products to their consumers that are safe and lead people to live better lives, and that's consistent with our overall brand mission. So I think you have two very different modalities at which legalization occurred, and it's interesting to see the difference. I will tell you that in Thailand, there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm and engagement about this, about the value of this incredible plant and how it can help people. And, as an example, we just launched a partnership with the Beach Samui Hotel, Resort and Hotel on Koh Samui Island, which in my mind, I think is the very first resort in the world where you can go get cannabis treatments for wellness. And we're very excited about that. I have not seen this, anywhere else. And I think it can happen in Thailand because the doors were ripped right open. Now, on the flip side of that, they need some regulation, and the government's been very chaotic and a bit bipolar about trying to put some sort of regulated system in place. The government itself has been very chaotic in Thailand over the last few years, and that's made it even more challenging. But overall, I do believe that they will put a regulated system in place. There's drafts of it. I think it's imminent, but it's going to be different than what we've seen in the West. And so I think it's exciting to see the evolution of this different model as opposed to what we're all used to. And I can just tell you from a consumer perspective, it's very exciting to see the free flow of capital and goods in a market where it's just evolved, very, very differently. And there, like anything else, certain things need to be fixed a little bit. We need to make sure that it's safe. We need to make sure it doesn't get into the hands of children. We need to make sure that it's not, near schools and all that kind of stuff. But for adults to have free access to this is an amazing thing, and I encourage people to go to Thailand and check it out. It's quite different from what we're accustomed to.
Yeah, it seems like in the United States, and maybe this is a good segue. I mean, you did a good job of kind of blending the two topics together. It seems like what we see in the United States is, and look, this is the case, but it seems like we're treating cannabis like a scheduled substance. I mean, it's kind of in everything you led this up with, like Thailand descheduled it, and I feel like as a result, they're just treating it like any other commodity almost, right? Like just alcohol, cigarettes, like it's pretty normal. And I guess I wanted to ask you, like you say, maybe there's some structure that can be added and some protocols, for testing and uh, product
Safety,
custody, if you will. Yeah. Um,
so.
but do you think the abundance that you're seeing in a place like Thailand lends itself to normalization quicker than what we're seeing with our approach in the United States, where we like keep cannabis like relegated to oftentimes limited numbers of dispensaries that are like out of public view?
There's no doubt. There's no doubt that Thailand, that the overall cultural adoption of cannabis in Thailand is radically different than in the US. Now, that's not to say that the pharmaceutical industry in Thailand has been fighting it, that the medical industry in Thailand, that have been fighting it. I mean, they have. There's a lot of anxiety in Thailand from various groups that have concerns about just the absolute free flow of cannabis. So I think that has to be addressed and should be addressed. And I think in my mind, it's no different than the chemicals that are put into our food and nanoplastics that are floating up in the air in the US. Like there has to be a certain amount of regulation to protect the consumers. 100% that has to happen. And it has to happen in Thailand too. But at the same time, when you blow the doors wide open like that, it feels differently in the country. You feel that it's a product that is you see it being consumed, you hear about the fact that it's helping people, and the stories are a little bit more fluid. However, I think it's important to also note that Thailand has a great history of using cannabis in Thai traditional medicine. Thai traditional medicine is very different from the American medical system, right? It's very herb oriented. It's like Chinese medicine, and it has a very rich history of thousands of years. And that is an undercurrent that exists in Thailand that does not exist here. And so you actually have a very strong part of the medical community in Thailand with this rich history of Thai traditional medicine that has been a supporter of cannabis for a long, long time. We also have cannabis doctors in the US, and we have cannabis medical professionals. But in my mind, that hasn't been a cultural that hasn't been a cultural driver for generations in this country, whereas it has in Thailand. So, I think having that undercurrent has really helped the adoption. And so what we're seeing in Thailand is this very interesting kind of battle between what I'll call kind of Western pharmaceutical the medical system, which definitely exists in Thailand. There's a lot of medical tourism, and the Thai traditional medical system that has been very, herb focused. And I think I think some people may not agree with me on this. I think cannabis is an amazing plant. It's an amazing plant medicine. Cannabis is rich in a variety of compounds that do all kinds of things. We all know that CBN is great for sleep. It's been anecdotally that anecdotal evidence for many years, and now the science is finally starting to get done that's important. We know that THC is great for pain. So it's rich in these compounds. But my personal opinion is that these are very powerful ingredients to put into products that can help people live better lives. And so when you look at it that way, and you look at it from the aspect of a Thai traditional doctor, they see that they can use these herbs for these things, and they can use cannabis for these issues, and they can combine them in ways that deliver a better medical solution for patients that have XYZ condition. And I think that's the right way to look at it. We're so focused in the US, this is cannabis, and it's the only solution for all these things. But to be honest, cannabis is great for all kinds of things. But I think we need to look at it in the context of overall wellness. And that's what we're trying to drive here at Sunderstorm with the Connor brand is leading people to live, consumers to live better lives using cannabis products. And so we're starting to really enhance the cannabis that we put into our products with other type of coactives and other ingredients. And that cannabis, by the way, is different terpene mixes, different cannabinoid mixes, combined with coactives that create a richer experience for consumers.
Very cool. And before we move on, do you want to tell the audience about some of your like popular products or maybe your most favorite products, whatever?
I mean, I think what's valuable is to understand where we came from and where we're going today.
Sure.
So, we came into this industry wanting to make great products that consumers could rely on. Everything we tested, 10 years ago was completely mislabeled. And it was a shame. And I know it was difficult to get things tested and all that, but consumers couldn't even rely on what they were getting. And then it took another year or so to just find pesticide-free cannabis to be able to use in our products, where consumers weren't being poisoned by all these chemicals that were being used in all these grow operations. Now, most of that has been, weaved out of the industry and the licensed side of the business, and now we feel we have much safer products for consumers that are tested and the potencies are consistent. And I think that's kind of the first phase. And we definitely are one of the drivers in the industry to do that. We had our own testing in-house, our own HPLC back from the minute we started this company. And we wanted to make sure that we delivered on our promise to consumers. But then, we entered this industry because we believed in the power of the plant and its ability to lead people to optimal lives of wellness, right? And that's kind of our mission here. And wellness means that we need to treat a variety of conditions. So, we always wanted to drive towards, once we had the base products and they were consistent, reliable, and all that, sativas and indicas and hybrids and all that the consumers are aware of. The next phase is to drive towards functional products that consumers can use for specific reasons. And so we wanted to launch our FX line 2 years ago. We decided to launch it this year because the industry is more ripe for it. And it's going terrifically well. So we evolved from fast-acting nanotechnology, which, by the way, we're the first company in the industry to deliver nanotechnology fast-acting products in 2015. But then we drove towards these new functional products. So this year we launched another sleep product. We've had a sleep product in the market for many years, but we launched another sleep product. We launched a love gummy, which is great for those that want to use it for to empower their relationships. And then we launched our energy gummy, right, to give people energy to use it during the day or go to concert at night. And that function line is going to grow into a variety of products that are really specific condition based. And you can imagine all kinds of reasons that people consume cannabis, and we want to make products that address those reasons. And so there is this shift kind of going on in that regard. And so that's where we're headed. And then also this year we were very excited about launching our new minis, Kana minis, which are these M&Ms, these little chocolate bites, look just like an M&M. There are 4 milligrams of THC plus 2 milligrams of a minor cannabinoid, depending on which one you eat or buy. And they're terrific. You can have a few of them. They got nanotechnology, so they're fast acting. They taste amazing, and they're really taking the world by storm right now. People are loving them. So we're trying to broaden out our categories a bit, and in terms of the products, and making sure that they do what we say they do, that they're reliable, that they're consistent. And by the way, the 2 years of R&D that went into the Kana minis, part of that time was making sure that every single one that we deliver is 4 milligrams THC plus 2 milligrams of minor cannabinoid. We have competitors that have similar, something, products that are sort of in the same category that are very inconsistent in their testing. And we spend a lot of time and energy making sure that these things function with the correct consistency. So I would just say that that's really kind of been our evolution, and we will continue to drive new interesting products, um, uh, uh, particularly in the edible side of the business, while we expand into new states and new countries and all of that. And then we will put a massive, or we are putting a massive effort behind the functional aspect of cannabis so that people can actually buy products that serve a specific need. Just like you'll see when you buy nutraceutical products, right? You buy them because you have a certain need. You have pain, or you have anxiety, or you have some particular issue you're trying to address, a headache you're trying to address, that you go and buy specific products for that. And I think that's the future of cannabis. I really do. Alongside, the recreational and enjoyment aspect of it as well.
Sure. Once again, folks, if you want to check out these products, check out the show notes. We've got links in the show notes. You can find these products in dispensaries, and as you said, you can order them right to your door, as you know, hemp. And actually, I wanted to discuss that because I see, and I'm just curious if you see this too. I see some parallels as to what has happened with hemp in the United States and what you described as happening in Thailand. And it's just kind of this, and it became even more clear when somebody showed me this the other day. They told me, Cole, go to the farm bill, scroll all the way to the bottom. Like, this is literally at the very bottom of the farm bill, and it says conforming changes to the Controlled Substances Act. And long story short, it basically says the term marijuana does not include hemp, and therefore hemp is not a controlled substance. And I was just curious, like, do you see those same analogies? I was like, whoa. Like, when somebody pointed that out, I was like, holy crap, this is
I think,
descheduled cannabis.
yeah, 100%. And I think it's a good point that you bring up, and I think it's a fascinating point for us because people talk about destigmatizing cannabis, and we've been fighting for decades to destigmatize cannabis, and it's been a slow, evolution, and it's finally, gaining speed over the last, let's call it 5 years, which is terrific. I think there's some form of cannabis in the U.S. in 40 states, something like that. So and then 70 to 80% of the population, are happy to have it be legal. So that destigmatization is happening, but I really do believe, despite the fact that those of us in the licensed industry are struggling to battle against the hemp industry, and I think it's very challenging at the, let's call it the 100-foot level, right? Very granular in the trenches. But if you go up to like 65,000-foot level and you see what's happening, the hemp industry has absolutely made a shift towards destigmatizing cannabis and making people feel comfortable about it. I just spent about a month ago, I spent a few days in Minnesota just running around and just taking a look at the bars and the liquor stores and seeing all the hemp beverages that are being sold there. And there is a massive shift going on of people moving from alcohol to hemp cannabis beverages. And these are people that maybe they, took a gummy once in a while, but maybe they didn't, and their friends are saying, gosh, try this drink. There's only 2 or 3 milligrams of THC in here. You'll feel a little something. People drink the drink and they're like, well, that's very different from what I thought. And so while the hemp industry is created enormous challenges for those of us in the licensed side of the business, there is no doubt that it's driving the adoption and the acceptance of cannabis as a plant medicine for the general population in the U.S.
Yeah.
Now we have to figure out how do these worlds are colliding. Now we got to figure out how they can work together.
Yeah.
And I think that's a challenge. But you're right, it's similar in ways to what happened in Thailand. You go to Texas, which is, was probably going to be one of the last states to legalize cannabis. And now you have, starting with D8, now you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stores selling all kinds of cannabis products all over the state. And you have the veterans in the state fighting for, for continued legalization of cannabis. That's something that 5 years ago we just couldn't even imagine. So I think it's really interesting. Ultimately, it's about the legalization of the plant. That's what's happening. And those of us in the industry need to figure out how we can navigate through these enormous challenges to get through these, to survive and thrive and deliver great products to consumers who are badly in need of these products.
And that's what I was going to ask you about really quick. I want to your credit. Here's a picture of a 77-year-old man that I was able to convince to try cannabis for the first time. He tried this River Bluff Collective. It wasn't the 50 milligram, it was the 10 milligram drink that they have. But he had a few. He had a few, surprisingly. I
Really?
told him, just maybe start with one, maybe see how you feel. And I mean, he was knocking them back.
Oh,
So, and he said he didn't have a bad time. And so that was the first time that 77-year-old man had tried cannabis. It was really a cool experience. But anyways, I wanted to get back to that last point that you just said. That was going to be my big question for you today was like, and it seems like you see the answer, you see the light. But you just accurately laid out, we hear all the time these cannabis companies, they say, that this hemp has become a problem. But at the same time, to your point, it seems to accomplish a lot of the problems you all deal with as cannabis operators, like the inability to do interstate commerce, 280E, banking, branding, like with trademarks and stuff. Like the list goes on, all these different things that you can do. And I'm just wondering, it seems like, you may know this, but I was curious if you can share with our audience, like, is the answer taking the good and leaving the bad? Like you say, even with Thailand, like they need a little bit more testing structure and custody. And I think the same could be said about hemp. So it's like, do you think in a weird way, it's like hemp is almost like the answer?
I don't know if hemp is the answer. What I would say is it's a little bit, I see it a little bit differently.
Hmm.
I see this as as kind of the natural evolution of the legalization of cannabis in the United States. And by the way, the world. You know, if you look at the primary reason that cannabis is not available everywhere, it's nothing more than fear. It's nothing more than fear. And that fear didn't used to exist. If you go back in Thailand, probably 500 years, you know, Southeast Asia, cannabis was consumed all over the place. Even in the US, you know, hundreds of years ago, cannabis was consumed comfortably. We are the ones that created this fear. We are the ones that instilled in people's minds that this plant is unsafe. And it's just simply not true. So for me, what we're doing is we're dropping that level of fear so that consumers are much more comfortable with it. And with that with that comfort comes legalization. But along with that legalization, we have and reliability, and consumers have to know what's in these products, and they have to know when they consume this drink, what are they going to feel like? And they got to know that they're not being poisoned by pesticides or other compounds that they don't know what's inside these things, inside these beverages or inside these edibles. And so what we're really seeing is we're seeing this natural, this kind of flow of legalization, but it's very frothy. I call it frothiness. People say, oh my God, California Newsom just blocked hemp sales in California. The end is here, right? The whole hemp thing is gonna die. The way I look at it is it's frothiness. You're gonna have bans over here, you're gonna have legalization over here. It's a fight, it's a battle, but ultimately what's happening as a consumer comfort and understanding and acceptance and adoption is happening everywhere. And as those barriers drop, all the regulatory stuff will just start to fall into place because it it will happen because consumers will drive it, and consumers are driving. And I encourage the consumers to continue to drive it. Speak out and, tell your representatives what you care about and what you want and why these products are important for you. And talk to your friends, do the same thing. There's a lot of chatter going on. And so that's the underlying current that's happening behind all this. And those of us in the industry just need to figure out how to put in place the correct regulatory structure so that we're not overburdened with taxes, we're not overburdened with regulations, but we do deliver safe, reliable, consistent products to the market that consumers want. It's and that's it. And by the way, I feel exactly the same way about psychedelics. So, I know you do some psychedelic stuff on your podcast, and for me, I'm a huge plant medicine person, and I have a great appreciation for psychedelics and the value of these psychedelics. But they also must be done in an environment which is safe and reliable and uh, you know positively helpful for consumers. And we're learning how to do that as well. It's it's happening. It's just not easy, right? These are powerful substances that change, you know, the way people think about the world, and they're psychoactive, so they have impacts. And by the way, and they can change your health. There's an endocannabinoid system for a reason. And so we need to make sure that they're being that the science is delivered behind them so that we know how to make them optimal for whatever their use case is.
Yeah, I didn't think of you made a really solid point there in which, the industry is gonna, and in a way they are, you're an example of it, grapple with hemp and the newfound access it's given consumers. Because, like you just said, like it's interesting that you can just buy it online or get it, in Minnesota from a bar. I think I even saw a movie theater in Minnesota that had the drinks. And it's in my home state of Illinois as well. There are different retail stores that, like Benny's liquor store, which is a pretty popular chain in Illinois. They're carrying hemp drinks now, and I've been hearing from adults that tell me they would never step foot in a dispensary, but they were on their way out of Benny's and they saw, hmm, low dose THC drinks. I've always kind of wanted to try cannabis. It's a drink. That doesn't seem that scary. And it's just kind of interesting how this newfound level of access is almost forcing us to question the dispensary model almost. You know what I mean? Where it's like, it's not that there can't be liquor stores, it's not that there can't be dispensaries, right? In other words, places you go to find these quality products, especially like, if you go to a liquor store, it's different from going to just Walmart. Like if you go to a liquor store, you're going to find craft connoisseur products to choose from versus Walmart, where you may have a decent selection, but that's not what they focus on at Walmart, right? So I think there's always going to be a place for the dispensary. I'm not trying to say that that's going away, but it really does, I think, add a whole layer of normalization that I just don't think would have happened if it didn't just happen like it did. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
it
Yeah.
reminds me of medical cannabis. Like back in the day, we did what we have to do. And I'm not saying obviously there are medical benefits to cannabis. That's why the rescheduling decision is happening right now. That's the government finally acknowledging that, yes, as we've all known, there are medical benefits to cannabis. But I guess what I'm trying to say is we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that medical cannabis was really the Trojan horse to get us the progress we have today. And I wonder if hemp is that same thing where it's like we just kind of got to take the win where we have it, you know?
I think that's an interesting way to look at it. And I would say I say this to people all the time in the psychedelic world as well. There's no
Mhm.
way that psychedelics would be where they are today with all the excitement and enthusiasm for them if it wasn't for all the hard work that's been done in the cannabis industry over decades. And I have a lot of appreciation for those revolutionaries that have been in the trenches fighting this battle in cannabis to drive legalization. And I think it's an amazing thing in my lifetime to see this radical shift from where we were 30 years ago to where we are today, and it's exciting. And I think there's a lot of issues with hemp. There is no doubt. um and I don't think that it's great to have 3,000 milligrams of D8 products that we don't really know how it was extracted and what solvents or residual solvents are in there, sitting on the shelf of a smoke shop. I don't think that's a good thing for society, is my personal opinion. But you're right, you know, there's a lot of decent products out there. There are some decent products, and they are changing people's mindset, and they're like we talked about earlier. They're establishing a level of comfort. The beverages are certainly helping out a lot. So again, we just need to figure out how all these worlds work, all these products and worlds work together, right? In a way that doesn't limit those of us that are in the licensed side of the business that have been paying our dues and taxes for many, many years. It's not fair for us to be able to have to compete with products that are paying no taxes, have no regulation. It's not good for That's not good for society either. So, I'm reminded a little bit about, as you were talking about the alcohol industry, and when you had the legalization of alcohol, back in the early 20th century. And you had a lot of stuff made in stills in the backwoods of Kentucky. And and there was a lot of shit product that was put out in the world, and a lot of people went blind, and a lot of people died, from methanol and from other things that consumers just didn't realize what they were drinking. That's not good for society. Um, so, and I don't think that 100 milligram shot of, uh, you know, you know, 2 ounce shot of a cannabis drink is good for a first time user. I think we got to provide knowledge and education and systems in place so that people get the right products for them, and that's part of the adoption. Is it the dispensary system? Great, right? Is it something
Right.
different? Great, but whatever it is, consumers got to be aware. I mean, it's not like we're going to the liquor store and buying Everclear every day, right?
Right. I did want to ask you about that though. Like to your point, one of the things that hemp has made me question also is this idea that we have of dosage caps. Again, I'm right there with you. We need to have the products labeled accurately so that people know what they're consuming, and even like we've done with cannabis, recommendation where it's like you do start with 5 or 10 milligrams, go low, go slow. I think that's very
Or
responsible.
less, or
Or
less.
less, exactly. You can always eat more, you can't eat less, right?
Yeah.
But I was just curious. I was going to ask you about that. It's one of the only other questions I really had on this subject. It seems like with alcohol, we do have these highly potent products that responsible adults can choose to buy. And I'm wondering, I recently heard somebody describe potency caps as a nanny state solution that should be left up to adult preference. And I'm curious, do you think that's like maybe an evolution we'll see where it's not that we won't have starter products, but do you think we'll have like an Everclear of cannabis in the future or something like that?
I think we have Everclear of cannabis, right? We have products, vape products that are in excess of 90% potency, right? So you have drinks that are 100 milligrams, like I described, in a 2 ounce shot. You have strong products out there. Um, the issue is, it's a difficult question to answer. I fully believe that these products should all be made available to consumers.
Hmm.
I've met so many consumers in my life that have absolutely serious needs, medical needs, and they need high potency products, and they have to have them. They have to have the availability of those products. It's super important, whether they have anxiety or whether they have pain or whatever. And I believe that the consumer should decide what is the right product for them. However, I also think that we need to make sure that the wrong products aren't delivered to consumers that are not prepared or do not know what they're buying. And I think that education piece is super important. And it's the same thing of getting it into the hands of kids in high school. Like that's, I'm not an advocate of that, right?
Sure.
You have to provide certain mechanisms that protect people in ways in ways so they don't hurt themselves, I guess is how I'd put it. But I do believe I am a firm believer that people should have access to products that they need, and there should be very limited restrictions on that.
Yeah.
But we have to figure out a way so that so that if someone's drinking Everclear, they know what's going to happen compared to a beer.
Well, and that's just it. That's kind of why I thought this question was so interesting because, like, I don't remember how I learned the difference between an Everclear and a beer, other than like,
Trying it.
well, I mean, yes, sure, trial by fire. That's how a lot of us learn. But
It is.
to
Yeah.
your point, I don't know that we want that with cannabis. So I'm like, how do we find somewhere in the middle where it's like you still have, like you say, those high dose options for people um, that need it and know that what they want and when they want it. I'm one of those persons. That's kind of why I'm actually asking this question. Like the 50 milligram drink I flashed up earlier, some people like are like, wow, you drink a 50 milligram drink? Yeah, I drink like three.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I like to kick it up a notch. But sometimes at the dispensaries I go to, it seems like it's just I have to drink so much or eat so much. I feel like I'm gorging myself on carbs, and it's like, man, if there was like an Everclear, like a big bottle of
Yeah.
THC, I could
Yeah.
almost dump
Yeah,
in.
and if it's right for you, great.
Hmm.
Have at it. What's amazing about the personal consumption of cannabis is as a good friend of mine, Len May, says at Endocanna Health, cannabis is personal. It
Yeah.
impacts our bodies very, very differently. I am very sensitive to cannabis compared to psychedelics, for example.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's very interesting to me for me to see that. But our bodies are different, and we people will need the products that they need. It's just we have to figure out how to avoid overdosing. Look, I guess the way I'd say it is, in the edible side of the business, there isn't a person that I've met that doesn't have a story. I call it the story, right? Taking too much and either ending up in the fetal position on the floor or just ruining their birthday party or whatever it was. And I don't think that's great for anybody. I think what we as an industry want to do is to use the product or put products out there that allow people to feel the way they want to feel. And whether that's education, whether that's some sort of limits, I think time will tell, and we need to try different things. We're still in the infancy of legalization and acceptance of this plant. And when you look at 30 years ago, you didn't have vapes that were 92% potency, THC potency. You didn't have flour, which is 35% potency. The world has changed, and we need to make sure that these products are delivered in a way that consumers know what they're getting. And for high potency consumers like you, great. Have a drink your Everclear. Have these products available. I think that one of the interesting things for me, and I talk about this all the time, is that shelf space in licensed cannabis is very expensive, very expensive. And so there is only a limited number of products that can go on the shelf, and I call it the long tail of cannabis products. You don't have that long tail of cannabis products that you can put on the shelf because the dispensaries can only afford to put products on the shelf that have high turnover, which means you're catering to this, catering to a very small subset of overall consumers. Um, we find that a lot of our consumers of our Kana gummies only buy once a quarter, and that's fine for them, and that's perfectly fine too. Um, but the core consumer that buys again and again and again, they're kind of the heart of this industry. But we want to have products for all types of consumers. And I think one of the most interesting things that we're talking about for the hemp industry is that the hemp industry and selling products online has created this long tail of all kinds of interesting, crazy products that are out in the world that consumers are willing to try and test and all of that. And so that that's what could happen when it's kind of when the doors are blown wide open. And so I think we need a combination of both. We need to have some sort of regulatory framework, but you need to have this long tail of products that if only a small subset of consumers want these super high dose products, or they want, M&Ms that are only 1 milligram, so they can have just one of them. You have all of it. And I think that's what the industry has to drive towards. So it just interacts with our bodies completely differently, and we gotta have access to it all.
Yeah. Well said. Well, speaking of access, I'm going to have, as I mentioned a few times, links in the show notes. One of the ones I want you to check out is the Find Us link. It's how you can find Kana edibles near you. And so it looks like at a glance, they're in Illinois, my home state. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're in
That is
Illinois?
100%. We just opened up in Illinois about 5 or 6 months ago. We're very excited about this. It's a great market. We got vapes and gummies in Illinois, which is super exciting. I encourage
Oh,
people to try both.
rock on. It looks like you're in California, Massachusetts as well. Any other states that I'm missing that you want to mention?
Nevada
Nevada, nice,
and
cool.
no.
And
Go to
you say in
Thailand,
Thailand,
try
nice.
Kana gummy in Thailand.
That that's so cool. And then, like you said, if you're not in a legal state, you can get the hemp via the website. So,
Which interestingly enough is identical.
hmm
So
there
yeah.
you go, there you go. So either way, you can try these products. Check out the show notes. Anything else you wanted to mention, Cameron? I just wanted to thank you again for your time today and sharing all the awesome insights.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is that we really care about our consumers, and we got in this industry because we care about our consumers. Everything we do is tested. Everything we do is has zero pesticides of any kind, even though the states allow a certain amount of low level amounts, just like organic food. We go way overboard to make sure that our products are properly packaged and safe and and consistent for our consumers. And we encourage consumers to reach out to us. Please go to our Instagram if you have any questions. We're on it. We're happy to respond. We really do think that it's important to make sure that everyone understands why we're here and what we do, and why we believe our products are great.
And again, the links to that Instagram will be in the show notes. Cameron, looking forward to seeing what you do in the cannabis industry. I'll definitely be watching. Please reach out if you ever want to come back on. If not, I'm sure you'll hear from me because I'll be watching all the exciting things you do. And folks, I hope you found as much value in this episode of the Cole Memo. I'm going to restart that thought. I hope you found as much value in this episode of the Cole Memo as I did. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.